Terry comes back in, we will get started. I think she's on her way. There they are. No problem. It's just now 4 o'clock. You are 4 o'clock straight up, right on time. Right on time. Okay. Welcome to the Joint Education Committee. Thank you all for being here. I'll call this meeting to order, and I just really have one announcement. Do you have any announcements, Commissioner? Okay. The only announcement I have, the Board of Education has set our dates for policy review, and we typically have these meetings on those same dates. So these are the dates I would like to propose that we do our joint ed meetings. March 23rd, April 11th, and July 20th. And I can repeat those. March 23rd, May 11th, May 11th, and then July 20th. So you can look at those dates, and we just kind of set, Terry gave me this today. So you can look at that, Commissioner, and see if that will work with your all schedule, but those are the dates, if that works for you, that we're already here, so it would be great for us. So
I won't be late next time, I promise.
they're all Wednesdays. Is that okay? Okay. Is that good? Wednesdays? Okay, so we'll do these Wednesdays at 4 o'clock? Perfect. I love it. Okay, fantastic. Okay, then we will move. You don't have any announcements or anything? Okay, we'll move right along to our new school construction update, and I'll turn it over to Russ Oakes.
Thank you, ma'am. And I'll make a couple of general remarks, and if you all have detailed questions or anything along that line, Doug Shover, our facilities director, is here, and we'll be able to get into whatever you want to get into. But just so I think everybody understands, right now is a pretty turbulent time in the construction industry, both in availability of materials and then accordingly in the cost of those materials, and trying to manage our projects and keep the timelines with that respect is challenging. I think, like we also struggle with labor right now, I think the construction industry is also struggling to keep labor and keep their calendars on track. But as you know, we've got 3 elementary schools under construction right now: Lonsdale, Adrian Burnett, and a new school in the northwest part of the county. Lonsdale Elementary School is a replacement school for the existing Lonsdale Elementary School. It is calendared to be open to students in August of this year. And right now, believe we're currently on track to do that. The new school, or the old school, is scheduled to be demolished and the parking constructed for the new school between September and November of this year. So when we open the school, if we can keep it on its current timeline, it will open without the parking that it is planned, but we don't see that as a great degradation, because there's almost no parking at the existing school now, so we don't think we're losing anything for those couple of months. And in the end, we'll pick up, I think it's 126 parking spaces that we definitely don't have right now. The project is largely dried in, and the contractors are in a position where they can begin working on their interior electrical and mechanical systems. And we expect in the very near future some interior finish work to begin. So we're optimistic with the timeline on that one. Adrian Burnett Elementary School is a replacement school for Adrian Burnett. It is being built on campus immediately behind the school. As a matter of fact, and Lonsdale is similar to this project as well. There are areas where the new school is 20 feet or less from the old school. So it's a challenging construction environment. Adrian Burnett is calendared to be available in June, so that we could put students in it in August, complete our work over the summer. We're concerned right now that based on where that school is in the construction process, that timeline may not be achievable. We have scheduled some time to sit down with our contractor and our architect on that particular project and look at what our options might be, either to get that project back on track, back on timeline, or to look at it and say, when do we actually reasonably expect that school to be finished, and how do we move into it? And do we move into it during the school year at some point, whether it's over an extended break, like fall break, Christmas break, or some other area? Doing that move that way is not optimal. We've done it sometimes in the past at different schools. The last time I remember doing it is when we moved into the new Gibbs Elementary School, where we basically, over a 4-day weekend, moved into a school, moved across the street, and put everybody into it. And when we did that, we said, gee, let's never do this again. But we're in a position right now where we may find ourselves doing that. I think one of the good things that we have going for us is there's no zoning implication to either one of these schools, Lonsdale or Adrian Burnett. So it gives us a little bit of flexibility on that front. So more to follow on that as we work through those projects. I think one of the interesting things, and this illustrates the nature of the construction environment right now. Our contractor told us in the last day or two that the main electrical switchgear for the Adrian Burnett project won't be delivered until April. That, in a normal project timeline, that switchgear would have already been on site and available to begin installation work. So that'll be a challenge for the contractors, and we'll see where we get to on that one. But we'll have to keep the board informed. Like I'm saying, we should know in a couple of weeks, what our options are, and can make some recommendation on those options. But where I stand, if we're not going to be in the school, or we think we're not going to be in the school in August, it's better to know right now than in July. So we'll work in that direction on that project. The Northwest Elementary School is an additional. It's a new school. It's not a replacement school. It's designed to pull students from Hardin Valley Elementary School and from Carnes Elementary School. Right now, when we put the school or recommended building the school, we developed a concept zone for the school, and it'll pull about 500 students out of Hardin Valley Elementary and about 400 out of Carnes Elementary. And that concept zone also includes a couple of dozen students from the current Ball Camp Elementary School. We have not gone through a zoning process for that school yet. That's something that we will start at the beginning of the coming school year. So in August, September, October, we'll go through that process with the community and the board to nail down specifically what that zone looks like and what that student population is going to be. That school is calendared to be available to us in May of 2023, and if we can keep on that timeline, that will certainly be no problem for us to open it in August of 2023 with students. Right now, it is still largely in the site preparation phase as we're putting in retaining walls and doing site prep. Mr. Shover told me this morning that they are approaching being ready to start putting in footers for one of the wings out there. So we're on track. We've got plenty of time. We do have one concern right now with that project, and that is in the water retention system that was designed for that project. The materials for that system, we were informed, would not be available for a couple of years. So they've got to go back and redesign that retention system. It's an underground water retention system. And By retention systems, I know you all have seen them probably on most all of our campuses. They look like a big dirt swimming pool where we collect the water. This particular project has an underground retention system designed, and the redesign on this and the materials that will have to be involved in the redesign will probably add some expense to that project. We haven't received an estimate yet from the contractor on that. We'll probably have to do some modifications to our contract and to our budget, and we'll have to bring that back to the Board of Education when we have that.
Yeah, Russ, I know several underground retention systems. The mall has one, and they're usually due to site restraints. Is that what the design there was for? There's no open space to put one?
We have one at Lonsdale too, and that was particularly why we were putting it in there. And one at Adrian Burnett is, yeah, that as well. So we're putting one in there. I think, and Doug, you correct me if I'm wrong, site constraints are part of, you know.
It's less. Thank you. Again, we do have, at the 3 elementary schools that are currently under construction, there is underground detention at each of those 3. At Lonsdale and Adrian Burnett, it is driven somewhat by availability of property. That's less of an issue at Northwest. It's my understanding, kind of before I assumed this role, when I was on the other side of the table, was that the school system was trying to get away from detention ponds. They're a liability issue, they're a safety issue, they're a maintenance concern. There is kind of a movement within the county to look at underground detention when that's feasible. That's why, going forward, the plan is to try to use underground detention on all new facilities.
And the use of underground detention also allows us additional surface space to do things like playgrounds and that kind of thing.
Is there a major cost? What's roughly 10% more, 20% more? Or?
We haven't received an official cost estimate, but we've seen numbers in excess of $1 million more. Okay. So, you know, we'll wait until we get some official numbers to work through that process.
Russ, is that redesign still an underwater retention system?
Yes.
Okay.
The site contractor on that, who again, when the project was bid, there was a certain underground system that was part of the bid package. When they went out to procure that, they were told, we can't commit to a date when we can provide that to you. And oh, by the way, we want twice as much as what we quoted you, but we can't tell you when you can get it. The site contractor is in the process of going through his due diligence to look at all the possible manufacturers who can provide a system for what is in the best interest of the project, not only schedule-wise, but cost-wise, and that's what we're waiting to come back to us.
In general, are underground systems more costly than open systems?
Yes, they are.
Is there a reason why we're not considering an open system moving to that?
Again, there was, as I understand it, a decision to move away from surface detention ponds. In this instance, because they were doing site work, because of some of the things they had already done, because of the way that property lays, we did not really have a way to pipe it to the open area, which is behind the building.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, one last question.
And like Doug said, our decision to try to move towards underground detention may be a little more costly on the front end, but we think it'll be less costly over the life of the facility in terms of maintenance and our liability on those. I'm sorry.
I think Doug may have partially answered the question I was going to ask, is that is given the lack of availability of materials to do the underground detention, do you have alternative plans, a set of plans that you've incorporated if you have to fall back to a above ground detention pond?
At this point, there's no consideration being given to going back to above ground simply because of the site logistics and the work that had gone on before this reared its head. Number one, we'd have to go back through an entire approval process through TDEC and those folks. And there's really, at this point, because of the retaining walls that are underway, there's really no way to get that water piped to the back side of the site, which is where we have available area for a surface pond.
Okay, what is the material that is in limited supply that's
It's
2-3
it's
years out?
plastic, an HDPE. It's a series of, they look like large corrugated pipes essentially, but, you know, much larger than the drain tile that's on your house. That HDPE, we're being told again, yes, it can be manufactured, but we can't commit to when your particular project is going to be available.
Do they have to be plastic, or could they be aluminum or steel?
The system that we're looking at now, as they are going through this due diligence, is actually a series of concrete balls.
Thank you.
And one last question. I'm assuming this will not, we don't anticipate the same issue on the other two projects, even though they're having underground systems?
Their systems.
They're already installed?
At Lonsdale, it's already fully installed.
Yep.
At Adrian Burnett, there are actually two different areas. One is completely installed. We've been assured that they have the materials for the second one that have already been procured.
You know, and I guess that shows the volatility of the market, because those two projects were under construction about 6 months before we even had a contract in place for the third. So,
Just
go ahead.
real quick, Russ mentioned the issue that was brought to our attention about the switchgear at Adrian Burnett. They finalized their order for their main electrical switchgear in May of 2021, and they've now been told that it will arrive on site in April of 2022. You know, that's normally probably a 12 to 15 week lead time to get that item, and they're looking at a year. So these are the kind of things that we're hearing about on an almost daily basis, it seems like.
So that's really in a nutshell where we are on those three projects. Any other questions or facility related issues we can address for you?
Yeah, you and I were talking the other day. Hardin Valley, have you had any preliminary estimates on what it would cost to add that additional wing there
To add that additional,
at Hardin Valley Academy?
you're talking about an expansion or the addition. We've done some analysis on that, and let me catch everybody else up on what we're talking about. Is we've got about 2,000 students at Hardin Valley Academy. We've got about 2,000 students at Farragut High School. We've got about 2,000 students at Bearden High School. Hardin Valley Academy has, for all intents and purposes, 77 classrooms. Bearden and Farragut both have between 90 and 100 classrooms. So Hardin Valley Academy is really, doing well to manage its number of students with the facility it has. So we're looking at the viability of putting an addition, a significant addition, onto Hardin Valley Academy, somewhere between 24 and 32 classroom addition. When the school was built, it was designed for that purpose. We're, I think, extremely fortunate in that the gentleman who designed Hardin Valley Academy is now our facilities director. So he understands the facility very well. So we're crunching the numbers on that. We think somewhere between $8 and $10 million for those, but we'll work through that as we do this year's capital plan and get more information on that. What we're finding right now is, the building a bricks and mortar addition, each classroom costs only slightly less than only slightly more than if we were to put in a portable classroom. Right now, we're looking at a cost of about $200,000 per portable classroom, and a bricks and mortar classroom, we're estimating at about $230,000. The other thing is that we've got portable classrooms that we bought months and months ago that keep getting pushed back in their delivery dates. So portable classrooms are not really more economical right now, nor are they faster to get our hands on. right now. So it makes doing a bricks and mortar addition pretty attractive.
And they also get in the way when you do an expansion.
I'm sorry?
They also get in the way when you do an expansion.
If you've put them in the wrong place, and sometimes the wrong place is the only place we have to put them. Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, and we'll turn to Ms. Henderson. She's going to give us an update on the superintendent search.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I do serve on the Superintendent Search Committee, so I'm going to give you guys an update on that. So our search committee met last on December 17th, and we discussed the superintendent job description, salary, and contract. And so following our discussion, the committee voted to make the following recommendations to the whole board, which was voted on at our January meeting. One of those was the superintendent's job duties. A lot of the boards around the state detail these within their policies. And so in the board policies, it's section C. So we actually just did policy review earlier today and went over those job description policies as a whole board. And we will be voting on them at our next voting meeting. We also brought the recommendation to the board of a starting salary of $250,000, and that does not include the benefits. And so that was voted on and approved by the whole board. And we also discussed the evaluation, the superintendent evaluation process, and the board voted for our search committee to continue our work with TSBA to implement and come up with that framework for the new superintendent. And we also have, at your seat, you have the timeline, the superintendent search timeline. And so I just wanted to go over where we were in that timeline. So January 21st, which is Friday, all the applications are due for all of the applicants. So that's coming up. And then on February 16th through 18th is when the board will interview our 3 final candidates. On February 22nd, the full board will vote. And March 9th, the contract will be extended. And later in March, on the 14th, we will make that announcement of who has been appointed as the new superintendent. And then on July 1st, the superintendent will assume his position before the school year begins. And our committee is going to meet this Friday morning to go over the interview process as well. Anyone have any questions, or if Susan or Daniel have anything to kind of add in to?
I think that covers it. Any questions? Go ahead.
Yep.
How many applications have we received?
So far, we have 12.
Okay.
Are they local or national?
A combination of both. We have a few local, and then the rest are national.
Yeah, I think there's 2 currently from within the district. I think there's 4 in the state, counting those 2, and the rest are outside of the state.
Diversity?
That, I believe so. Daniel, do you?
They're all white males. So,
Yeah. I haven't looked. I do need to take time to look into each applicant myself and kind of dive into them. But I will say too, which I didn't realize, there is a superintendent shortage apparently. I didn't know it spilled into that field as well, but there is a superintendent shortage. But you're right, we do need to do a better job of trying to, and that's something I can bring up too on Friday.
Just a focus statement, because I know we're
Yeah.
in that time.
Yep.
You know, people are looking for it. Make sure there's a diverse pool.
Yep.
Now, we want the most qualified candidate regardless of their gender or color or
Right, yeah.
background.
Oh, yeah.
Just to have a diverse
Yeah.
pool.
There was language that we intentionally put into our marketing materials and the position statements that we put out through TSBA. And I know TSBA submits that through the National Search for Superintendents. There's a database that people can access all across the country. And then there's several local state, or some statewide organizations that it was also submitted through. But there was an attempt on behalf of the Board of Education to make sure that there was language in there that really encouraged a diverse pool of applicants. But I don't know if you all have yet had conversations with TSBA to dig into some of the reasons that might be, but I know that we've not been talked to yet by the board as a whole, because it's been a pretty quick process, so.
Of the applicants so far, the two from within the district have not been superintendents, but is the pool, the remaining pool, are they superintendents or just employees within a system?
Let me pull the list up. It's really a combination. I'm not sure if anybody is currently a superintendent. Give me a second, I'll pull the list up.
There are a few, there's some assistant superintendents as well, and other people with more higher level central admin, but there are a few that are currently superintendents in other districts.
What are the size districts that they're coming from?
We haven't really received all that from TSBA yet, so
Yeah.
I have no idea, I haven't looked, because TSBA is doing that kind of analysis
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
So they're waiting until they get all those applications. So we really, what we know right now, unless people have done their own individual homework, is that we have 10 or 12, whatever it
Right,
is,
yes,
candidates.
we have 12, and so what we have currently from TSBA is the name of the applicant, where they're coming from, and then also their current position. And so once that closes on Friday, TSBA will then put all that information together and then kind of give us a report back on all that information from each applicant.
Is that number fairly close to what you all were expecting?
In terms of number of applicants?
Yes.
We had, the last time we did a search, we had, I believe, 26 applicants, I think. Does that sound like what we said?
I think
before?
there was more, and I think that really shows, like I said, I wasn't aware that there was a superintendent shortage, just like any other field that we're seeing just in our, where we are in the world. But I think that that is reflective of what is going on
Well-
with this field as well.
Well, and that's one reason why, the board, the committee analyzed salary ranges across the state and comparable districts. And
Yeah.
that was one of the considerations, that we wanted to make sure we were competitive, because if you guys remember, when we extended the contract to Mr. Thomas, he, he purposefully took a lesser contract than what we would have extended to anybody else, really. So the gap that created is quite sizable by the point where we are now. I mean, I would say $20,000 to $30,000 minimum
Yeah,
is what
minimum.
that gap would be. So just, it's important that you guys remember that
Yeah.
piece of history, because that's important. That is a difference.
Yeah.
And then just that we wanted it to be a competitive
Yeah.
salary.
I also think there's some things happen just in that process where prior to us deciding at our board meeting what the minimum salary would be, I think we only had 6 applicants. We got an immediate bump,
Yep.
which makes sense. People are waiting to see, well, am I going to apply? Is it going to be worth it? What's the minimum pay?
Yeah.
And I think we will have another bump between now and Friday, because there are people who take time to pull that stuff together and all that. So I'll be curious to see where we end up, but I think we might, have a number of additions between the 12 and above the 12 we have right now.
Yeah.
And given the state of school systems all across the country in a pandemic, there's probably a lot of people that are like, I'm just going to hold ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely think that comes into play. And that may come into play too, while we're seeing less applicants than we did before.
Right.
So, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think too, to piggyback on what Susan said, the salary conversation was a huge piece of both our search committee discussion as well as our full board discussion, because we want to make sure that we are competitive. We pulled the top 5 school districts in comparable sizes to us and pulled their current superintendent salaries to make sure that we are offering a competitive salary. I know,
Those would typically be some major cities, though, where the cost of living is considerably higher, probably.
Well, we looked at Nashville.
Nashville.
Hamilton County.
Hamilton, Rutherford, was another one we looked at,
So you stay within the
Shelby.
state of Tennessee.
Right, just the
Yes,
state.
yes,
Yeah,
just the state.
Just the state.
Yes. So we
So-
looked at the 5 that are comparable in size in Tennessee.
We looked
Yes.
at Hamilton County, was it 225, Gary?
240.
240. Hamilton
Yep.
County just hired a
They just
superintendent for
hired, yes,
240,000.
yes.
So they have, so we're right in line with them. They have a few less students than we do, because we looked at
Yep.
it on a student-by-student basis as well. as a
Yeah, yeah.
percentage.
And of course, Williamson County, it was in that list as well because they are comparable in size. But Williamson County is also the wealthiest county in Tennessee. And so that kind of came into play in
One
this
of
discussion
the wealthiest
also.
counties in the country.
Well,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think their salary was 340 or?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's,
they're
yes.
paying a little more than $7 per student for their superintendent. The least per student was 3. So that's the range. We're kind of at 250, we would be at about $4.50 per student that we're paying for superintendent.
And also, when we were discussing the salary, Blount County's superintendent also put in his resignation. And although that is a smaller county, you do have to think about that because it is, you know, right here, a great area of East Tennessee, so we will be competing with them as well.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Betsy. Okay, and then the last thing that we did, I believe that was at the same meeting, we worked on in January, our legislative priorities. We got a lot done in January, so we looked at our legislative priorities, and you have a copy of those at your seat also. And these, a large portion of this, as you'll see on the front page, it revolves around funding, and as you know, the state is currently looking at redoing how schools are funded. And so, you know, these are the same concerns that we've really had for quite some time. And of course, we're concerned, you know, about what that funding formula will look like, and certainly want to make sure that we don't receive less funding than we have.
Yep. Is everybody on commission aware that the TDOE did put out a draft framework just in the last week? So that's available if you've not seen that yet. So.
Yeah, but it's still, it doesn't tell us a lot because
it's very high level.
It's extremely high level. We really don't know if there's any kind of addition to education or what that's going to mean for us.
Can I ask you on funding for school nurses and guidance counselors and social workers, how many positions would this require to meet the ratios you're all wanting?
That we want? I tell you what, I have that from last year, so I'd say it's not very far off. Let me see. So basically what the dollars broke down to from last year, for school nurses, it was $3.6 million. For guidance counselors, it was $11.5 million. For social workers, it was $16 million. Mental health was $2.5 million. So that was $33.6 million. And of course, those are based on last year's, but I would say it's very comparable. So it's at least $33.6 million, if not a little more. And one other thing I had noted here, Knox County pays half of 4,000 teacher salaries. So, you know, as you guys know, all that adds up very quickly. So that's a big thing that we're kind of waiting for more information on. And then the other issues that are here on the other page, these really revolve around teacher evaluation. The second one is attracting more teachers, so teachers who are moving into Tennessee from other counties, or other states, making that easier for them to get their licensure. And then the third grade retention issue, which last year the legislature passed a law around not retaining, or about holding back students who were not ready to progress to fourth grade out of third grade. So basically what the Tennessee School Board Association and what we are asking is really that districts be allowed to make decisions based on the district data that we have on those students, and just for a little bit of leeway on that, because it's very stringent right now, and we feel like at the local level we would have more knowledge about what students need than a flat determination at the state level. So it's really, you know, it's really pretty focused, you know, around the funding issues, and then a couple of those things that will just help us do what we do a little bit easier. Any questions on those?
You did SSOs. I don't think you gave a number on that.
Let me see if I have one. I'm not sure I have a number on that. I don't.
Well, Russ can probably speak to what's our rough budget right now for our SSOs, and we currently have at least one at every school. So,
I can tell you roughly what we spend on security. I
Yeah.
don't have
Yeah.
a breakout for the SSOs
Sure, but yeah, the
individually,
security
it'll be
framework is all.
between $5 and $6 million a year.
Yeah. And we, in our current,
That includes everything, equipment, capital, personnel.
in our current force is roughly,
We have 117 folks authorized, and that includes the administrative overhead and leadership of the department as
Yeah.
well.
Board Member Henderson, can you speak just briefly to why you brought this issue up? Because we had quite a bit of conversation
Right.
around that at the board meeting.
Yeah, so this is something that I requested that was added to the funding portion of this document. In 2019, the state passed a bill to fund SSO officers in schools that didn't already have them in place. And so just to equal out that playing field, I think that that was important for us to ask for that funding, since Knox County was already paying for this and it was something that we already included into our schools. I thought it was important to bring up to the state, since we already had that in place, and they are funding the current ones after that bill was passed.
And then another thing you'll notice on that section, the TANF funds, the temporary assistance for needy families, those funds, you know, are federal funds that are accrued in Washington DC that are just sitting there waiting to be used. So what Tennessee School Board Association and what we're advocating for is that LEAs be allowed to use those funds to fund positions that help needy families. So we could use, you know, what we would like to do is be able to use that funding to offset some of what we're already using in general purpose to pay for, you know, whether it's mental health professionals or social workers, guidance counselors. So that's something that TSBA is also championing this year. So that would be really helpful. I mean, when we're trying to look for extra money, you know, aside from just an increase from the state, that money is sitting there. And so if they would allocate it in this way, it would be really helpful to all of us.
Well, and it's timely to add, because I'm sure you all are aware that in the state of Tennessee, we've had about a $750 million surplus with those funds. And this legislature passed a bill last year that says now we can't have higher than, I think it's $190 million surplus. So they're looking for something to do with that $500 million related to, that still fits within the same, you know, the same vision for what TANF is supposed to be. And so it makes sense to make that ask now. So.
And we have a meeting with our delegation sometime in February.
Yeah, I believe it's February 4th, but yeah.
Sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll meet with the whole delegation
Fourth,
to go over our
fourth.
legislative priorities with them.
Yeah. So, and I know you guys had a meeting this past week. Yeah. Okay. Friday. Okay.
I have a question. Am I just, well, I won't say crazy because I know that answer. Isn't our current nurse to student ratio 1 to 750 and we're just paying for the difference? Is that how it is, or is it?
I'm not sure that it's exactly 1 to 750. The goal would be 1 to 750. The 1 to 750 number comes from the, that's the recommendation from the National Association of Nurses.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the goal. Yes, we are paying for higher than the 1 to 3,000.
Right.
We are.
Right.
I don't know offhand, I don't have with me what those numbers exactly are.
Okay.
But does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It does. I just knew that there was no way that it was 1 per 3,000.
No, we pay you 100% of quite a few nurses.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of these areas were priorities in our current budget that we just passed. We asked for, and you all approved additional funding to increase that even more than what it is, but it's still not where it needs to be. So.
Yeah, I don't have it with me, but there are, the last time I looked at it offhand, don't quote me on this, but at least 1,500, possibly 2,000 salaries that we pay 100% of.
Okay.
In total.
Mm-hmm.
I believe. Like I said, please don't quote me because
Right.
I haven't looked at it, but it's quite a sizable number.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else on that? Okay, All right, other business? Anyone? Okay, then we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for being here.